Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Chen Ming arrived at the pirate space station not long after. The new director had already arranged for someone to squat in the special passage of the cruiser's position and met Chen Ming and said hello. The new director was not the deputy director who was demoted before, but the new director sent by the Shinda Company headquarters. He was obviously very clear about the situation of the previous director, so his attitude towards Chen Ming could be said to be quite respectful. Don't hit a smiling person. If others give face, then Chen Ming will also give face, and greet and get to know people normally. Anyway, as long as he and the people he knows are not offended, he doesn't care who is the director, or what the distribution of interest within the company is. After politely declining the new director's invitation to dinner, Chen Ming did not find the director and Lao Wu in the maintenance plant. Instead, the bald man he had given a sum of money to before and the only newcomer who survived the military attack and whom he had trained for 2 days before were working in the plant. After chatting with him for a while, Chen Ming ran directly to the hardware store in Space Arm No. 2, ready to find the boss. However, when Chen Ming arrived, he found that the hardware store was closed. At this time, he suddenly remembered that Baichuan's promotion ceremony was less than 2 weeks away, and the boss had been invited to attend, so it was normal that he was not there. Chen Ming turned around and ran to the administration building again, only to find that the door of the factory director's office was also closed. He might have gone out for something. So Chen Ming ran all the way to the bar again. The security guard who Chen Ming didn't know at the door obviously knew Chen Ming and walked into the bar with respectful eyes. After all, Chen Ming didn't wear protective clothing or power armor this time, so it was normal for the security guard to know him. In the past, Chen Ming was worried about his identity being exposed and his personal safety, so he wore various protective clothing and power armor. But now that his identity has long been made public, and with his current mental strength, even if he doesn't have any protective equipment on his body, it is enough to react in the case of any weapon sneak attack, manually make armor, and safety is also guaranteed. Then there is really no need to wear these things. Chen Ming entered the bar and swept his eyes across the bar. This time he did not miss any. Chen Ming asked the bartender for a glass of orange juice, walked a few steps to the corner of the bar, and sat down next to Old Wu, who was drinking here as usual. Old Wu, who was drinking with his head down, noticed Chen Ming at this time and asked unexpectedly, "Are you back?" "Yes, I was chased and beaten outside, so I came back to hide for 2 days." "What can chase you and beat you?" "More than 80 mechanical cruisers." Old Wu almost spit out a mouthful of wine. He felt that what Chen Ming said was true. "Did you dig up someone's ancestral grave?" "No, I dug up the foundation of someone's new house, but there's nothing else." "How are you doing recently?" Old Wu raised the glass in his hand and said, "It's still the same. I live like this every day. I do what I need to do. It's like there's a sister waiting for me to have dinner later. Otherwise, why would I drink so light?" Chat for a while. Chen Ming changed the topic to business and asked, "Have the number of pirates in the star field increased in the past half-month?" Old Wu nodded and said, "A little more, and there may be more in the future." "What do you mean?" Old Wu took out the terminal, put a few articles on the terminal and said, "Have you read the news in recent times? There are more deformed babies born in hospitals. And it's not just 1 or 2 places. This situation has occurred in most areas of the entire empire. Then, there are rumors that the wave of deformed babies from decades ago is coming again. This kind of thing has endless consequences, so it makes people panic. The whole environment is in chaos, so it's normal for pirates to increase." When Chen Ming looked at Old Wu was watching the news report on the terminal, Old Wu continued, "And recently, people from Zhujiang have also been active in the empire. The god of their cult is punishing humans for their blasphemy. Tut, tut, tut. But some people just believe this nonsense. What can we do?" Chen Ming shook his head slightly and said, "Zhujiang is really a troublesome thing." "Who said it wasn't? By the way, are there no movements from the top of the empire?" "It seems that there is no such thing at the moment. The propaganda department has only slightly blocked some news about deformed children, but no substantive solution has been proposed yet." Chen Ming has nothing to complain about the lack of a solution. After all, the empire can't come up with one even if it wants to. The gaze of another dimension that Yu Hui created some time ago didn't work for anyone. As a person who experienced the infection of the dimension, the president of the Psychic Association couldn't solve the gaze of another dimension, let alone other inexperienced psychics. In the next 20 years, various contradictions will inevitably erupt within the empire. If you want to spend these 20 years peacefully, you have to look at the means above. But this has nothing to do with Chen Ming. Anyway, the attention from another dimension can only affect fragile newborns, and he has no intention of getting married and having children yet. And he will continue to expand abroad in the future, so he will not be affected if he is not in the empire. So Chen Ming did not talk much about this topic with Lao Wu, and instead mentioned the factory director. I just went to the factory director's office. Where is he? He should be. Before Lao Wu could finish his words, the terminal on Chen Ming suddenly rang. The factory director's phone. Chen Ming picked it up and immediately heard the factory director's voice. Xiao Ming, I heard that you were back. Can you come to my office? Okay. Chen Ming agreed, shrugged at Lao Wu, and then stood up and turned to the door of the bar. But before he took 2 steps, he suddenly remembered something. He turned around and looked at Lao Wu with a smile and said, I almost forgot. Chen Ming took out the backpack he was carrying when he got off the spacecraft, and then took out a green gel-like thing in a refrigerated box and handed it to Lao Wu. Lao Wu took it and asked, What is this? Local specialties brought from outside. Tastes good. Although Lao Wu usually investigates various intelligence, he obviously does not have a deep understanding of the food of the thorn zerg, which is already an endangered species. Even if it is said that one of the reasons for the destruction of the space station where Chen Ming stayed before was the zerg, it is almost enough to know what kind of creature the zerg is, and there is really no need for a deeper investigation. It was only because Chen Ming happened to see the shellac before and had the zerg on hand that he would find out what kind of food the ordinary individuals of the zerg usually eat. Lao Wu obviously would not do this specifically. So now he is not clear about what Chen Ming gave him. Seeing that old Wu looked suspicious, Chen Ming waved his hand and said, It just so happens that I have to go find the factory director. I'll give him a portion when the time comes. If you want more, come to me. I have some on hand. Watching Chen Ming turn around and leave the bar, old Wu touched his chin and opened the refrigerator box. Chen Ming's smile, which seemed to be cunning, flashed through his mind again. However, this food should not be a ripoff for him, so he opened his mouth and took a bite of shellac. An unexpected and surprised expression appeared on his face, and he quickly ate the whole ball of shellac. After staying in the bar for more than 10 minutes, old Wu covered his stomach and went into the toilet of the bar. Of course, at this time, Chen Ming didn't know that old Wu was also very lucky to become the 0.2%. He just arrived at the building of the administration and came to the factory director's office. Here, Chen Ming saw people from Shinda Company again. The factory manager spread his hands and said, They said they would send you money, so I called you here. The person from Shinda Company immediately handed a card to Chen Ming with the corners pinched in both hands when he heard this, and said, Mr. Chen Ming, this is your first installment of patent fees. The antimatter engine has begun mass production and large-scale testing. Although Chen Ming already knew about this, he still cooperated and said, So soon? Yes, the antimatter engine currently seems to be the most promising technology in the empire. Now many people are waiting for the results of this large-scale test. If the results are good, antimatter technology will be widely promoted throughout the empire, and the empire may have another technological eruption. Is that so? Chen Ming nodded slightly. It seems that the importance of the antimatter engine is more important than he thought. Then his decision to keep the antimatter engine patent was indeed correct. Chen Ming inserted the card into the terminal. When he saw the 30 billion inside, Chen Ming's breathing became a little heavier. This money is more than he thought. After all, the patent for antimatter technology is not in his hands alone. The proportion of patents held by other researchers and the company itself is higher. It is a pleasant surprise to have 30 billion, not to mention that the people of Shinda Company also said that this is only the first phase, and there will definitely be more in the future. So Chen Ming accepted the money that can relieve his pressure for a long time in the future. Seeing that Chen Ming had confirmed the situation of the savings card and there was no dissatisfaction on his face, The people of Shinda Company bowed to Chen Ming and said, "Then I won't bother you anymore. Goodbye, Mr. Chen Ming." He left the office and left very straightforwardly. Chen Ming was stunned for a moment when he looked at the closed office door. He thought that Shinda Company was going to take this opportunity to talk to him, but the people just left. It would be fine if they just transferred the money to his card directly, and I don't know why they made a special trip. But since everyone had left, Chen Ming didn't say much and turned to sit in front of the factory director's desk. The factory manager handed Chen Ming a cup of tea and asked, "How long do you plan to stay this time?" Chen Ming took a sip of tea and replied, "The situation outside is good, and it doesn't matter whether I'm outside or not. So I plan to stay in the space station for 2 days and do something." Although as the exploration progress of the temporary base increases, the Supreme Point almost always needs to fly outside to open up routes. However, Chen Ming is aware of this, so in the week before the attack on the mechanical city, he specifically asked the Supreme Point to open up routes day and night with high intensity. For the use of the low-level Yuhui ships for the subsequent exploration, it should be enough to last for half a month. It's not a big problem not to go back during this period, and he is really bored to death outside. The exploration is fresh at the beginning, and it is really boring day by day. Anyway, Chen Ming only provides mental strength for the exploration. People are the same wherever they are, so it's better to run around and do something else. After understanding, the factory manager did not continue to ask Chen Ming what he was going to do, but just said, "If you need any help, just tell me." "I will." Chen Ming then chatted with the factory manager for a while about what happened during this period and left the factory manager's office. After receiving a batch of daily necessities that Lao Wu temporarily transferred to him, he returned to the highest point. After calling his boss and telling him that he was going back to the space station to stay for a few days, Chen Ming planned to start what he was going to do after his unexpected return. Although some things can be done anywhere, some things will be more valuable after returning to the Empire. For example, using psychic energy to deeply repair some technologies. As for what technology to deeply repair, Chen Ming had already thought about it before. First of all, it must be the technology of antimatter reactors and antimatter engines that the Empire seems to be vigorously promoting now. All technologies cannot be very mature when they appear. They must be gradually updated after a lot of tests and experiments. And Chen Ming's psychic energy can skip these steps. Therefore, when Chen Ming conducts deep repairs on antimatter-related technologies, the benefits should be the greatest. It just so happens that he has a Stardust with an antimatter engine installed. And because Chen Ming's deep repair psychic power only works on the target, any parts that can be disassembled at will not be deeply repaired along with the target of Chen Ming's psychic power. This means that the Stardust class engine has not been deeply repaired so far and can be disassembled at any time for related experiments. And this is also the reason why Chen Ming drove the Stardust class back to the space station instead of returning to the temporary base with other ships. In addition to antimatter technology, there is another thing that Chen Ming also plans to deeply repair. It is Chen Ming's self-developed unstable hyperspace channel jump engine. Although the inspiration came from the abandoned case of Yuhui's research that Chen Ming got from Yuhui before, but the subsequent ability to build this thing mainly depends on Chen Ming's repair psychic power without fear of loss, the modification psychic power to adapt at will, and his understanding of the hyperspace technology that is now popular and not too advanced. Chen Ming had a good idea at first, which was to use hyperspace to make the spacecraft achieve an effect similar to jump. Unfortunately, he was still limited by his technical level some time ago, which made the final product very unstable. Chen Ming did not achieve the jump effect he wanted, but instead achieved a weird random teleportation effect. His long-lost refraction was lucky to land in the gap between the mechanical clan, Yuhui, and the human empire after carrying this thing. If he was unlucky, he might have been teleported to some dangerous place. Chen Ming only used it once, and he had no time to conduct in-depth research and testing afterwards. So this technology has been hidden until today. However, Chen Ming believes that as long as this technology has been deeply repaired by his psychic power, the effect will definitely change significantly. Of course, it is not impossible to start researching this thing again with Chen Ming's current technical level, but it will definitely take a long time. Since psychic power can save time, Chen Ming feels that he doesn't need to study it honestly. Knowing the answer and inferring in reverse is much easier than calculating it slowly by yourself. Anyway, the research results he finally obtained must be correct, and he did not steal the fruits of others' labor, so no one can say that he was wrong. When the time comes, Chen Ming should publish this result in a scientific research journal in the empire under his own name. After all, Chen Ming still has some aspirations, and gaining widespread recognition in technology is what he has always wanted to do. Of course, there is another reason why Chen Ming wants to publish his research results. He is short of money. Even if Shinda Company just gave him 30 billion, he still lacks it. The consumption of development is much more than he imagined. Moreover, the materials consumed in the previous battle with the mechanical race are far more than he had estimated before. Chen Ming has only been out for less than 2 months and has only made one jump, built a temporary base, and explored less than 80% of the galaxies within 400 light-years. But the amount of materials consumed can be said to be very huge. And the colonized galaxy that Chen Ming is targeting is at least 7 or 8 extreme jumps away. Not to mention that he has another target, the coordinates of the mechanical satellite transmitting communication signals. That is even beyond 13 extreme jumps. Even if Chen Ming's way to find the colony coincides with the way to the coordinates of the mechanical family, the consumption in between is definitely not enough for 30 billion. He can't really live on the patent of antimatter technology. What he develops himself is what really belongs to him. The next day, before Chen Ming found Bai Quan to start a day of teaching, Bai Quan called him. And he came up and said, "I have already asked about the matter yesterday, and there is a result. But if I tell you in detail, you need to sign a contract." Bai Quan sent Chen Ming an electronic contract, which was a confidentiality agreement. Chen Ming looked at it and signed it directly. After confirming, Bai Quan organized his words and said, "Let me tell you a basic concept first, phase space. This is a unique space independent of the normal universe and hyperspace. Things inside the phase space cannot be observed by ordinary means, but things in the phase space can affect the normal universe and hyperspace under certain circumstances. This is the basis of the phase spacecraft we are developing." Chen Ming interrupted and asked, "Is this technology also the legacy of that civilization?" Obviously not, otherwise the mechanical race, as another legacy of that civilization, would not have no way to deal with things in the phase space. The source of our contact with the phase space is just an ordinary researcher. He conducted some research in the hyperspace. Following this signal, he discovered something that could not be observed by normal means, and he reported his discovery to the higher authorities. Then the Empire began to study phase space. Chen Ming suddenly asked again, "What did the researcher discover?" "I don't know." "I don't know?" "Yes, because when our phase technology developed to the point where we could investigate phase space, the object that allowed us to discover phase space had long disappeared, and the question of what it was has not been answered yet." "Okay." Chen Ming thought for a while and asked again, "Who was the discoverer?" "An ordinary researcher from Tachyon Technology. He did not participate in the subsequent research, so what special value does he have?" After waiting for a while and seeing that Chen Ming had no follow-up questions, Bai Quan said, "Have you finished asking? Then I will continue. According to our research over the years, the inside of the phase space is exactly the same as the normal universe, except that the phase space can affect the normal universe, while the normal universe cannot affect the phase space. And we have never found any existence that is unique to the phase space in the phase space. So some research institutes have the idea of treating the phase space as a unique environment to create unique spacecraft." Bai Quan paused for a moment to give Chen Ming time to digest and absorb, and then continued, "The situation is different now. Your discovery can basically confirm that something in the phase space is in it affects the normal cosmic environment. And the way that thing moves looks like some kind of creature, so it is temporarily named the phase beast, waiting for a more precise investigation before giving a scientific name. By the way, let me tell you first, we determined the location of your video based on the situation of the starry sky in the video you sent. So, you know? It's okay." Chen Ming said casually. "I jumped back to the Empire directly in front of the phase beast." If you move faster, you don't even need to analyze the video. Just go to the location where I jumped back to determine my jump trajectory, and you will know where I came back from. And I asked you to help me cover up the jump traces before, so it doesn't matter if you know it. So, how do you deal with this phase beast? Bai Quan hesitated for a moment and said, there is no way to deal with it. Although our research progress on phase technology is okay, the phase spacecraft itself is still in the experimental stage, and the size of the phase beast is at least the level of a cruiser. It's just a fantasy to go to the mechanical tribe to deal with the phase beast. At most, some spacecraft will go there to investigate and find a way to obtain data. Chen Ming asked with a little concern, what if it comes to the Empire? Is there no way to deal with it? That's not the case. Although the research on phased spacecraft has not yet reached the level of practical application, a lot of phased weapons have been developed long ago. If it doesn't work, we still have psychics. Besides, the phased behemoth in the video is completely relying on its body to attack the mechanical fleet without any non-melee attack methods. If it weren't for the fact that it is in the phased space, it would just be an ordinary space behemoth. Although we can't say that we can completely let down our guard against it, it seems that it is just like that at present. Chen Ming asked back, you mean that there is actually no need to worry about it, right? Yes. That's fine. I'll tell you if I encounter a phased behemoth later. After all, Chen Ming himself has no way to deal with this thing. If the Empire can find a way to deal with the phased behemoth, it will not be bad for him. Of course, if you don't encounter it, it would be even better. It would be best if the phased behemoth goes to trouble the mechanical race, so as not to disgust him. After finishing the topic of the phased behemoth, Chen Ming suddenly said, I want to ask you something, Bai Quan. Will your military accept some spacecraft technology or something? What do you mean? Have you figured it out? No. It's just that I have a research direction here. I think it's special, and it should be valuable. Bai Quan blinked his eyes. He knew everything about Chen Ming from birth to today, and knew what Chen Ming's technical level was. Although Chen Ming's technology has surpassed many people now, there is still a gap compared with cutting-edge scientists. So he said tactfully, just find some official websites or magazines to publish. The military has always been paying attention to research in all walks of life. If it is valuable to the military, they will contact the author directly. Chen Ming could hear the meaning of Bai Quan's words, and Chen Ming didn't find it strange. After all, who would have thought that a psychic who could only control spacecraft at the beginning would one day have such an outrageous ability to perform conceptual deep repairs on various mechanical equipment and even on living things? It's normal that Bai Quan doesn't completely believe him. But Chen Ming believes that time will give the answer. A week passed quickly. Chen Ming once habitually recorded what happened in the past week on the weekend night. In the past week, Chen Ming was operating normally without the temporary base, and he was exploring and investigating normally. He also accidentally found the skeleton of an Alturan sky eel floating in space, which was collected by Hui Huang, and the exploration of the galaxies around the skeleton was intensified. Chen Ming, who was in the space station, reduced the time spent on other studies while continuing to teach Bai Quan every day and used it on research. In a week, he successfully got out 2 deeply repaired technologies. Of course, the antimatter engine only had improved physical samples because Chen Ming himself did not understand antimatter technology. And the other unstable hyperspace channel jump engine he developed himself was completely different after deep repair. After a few days of research, Chen Ming has fully understood the operation of the improved hyperspace engine technology. And through reverse inference, he successfully wrote a paper that looks like a completely positive research. It can only be said that psychic power is also part of research ability. Then Chen Ming submitted the paper to a top academic journal related to spacecraft technology that he knew. He also borrowed Bai Quan's connections. He asked those who were responsible for review to speed up the review. Chen Ming didn't know where Bai Quan got this connection, but since he could do it, Chen Ming had no reason to refuse to do so. It takes a lot of time to review professional papers, so why not find connections? There should be no surprises in this paper. After all, Chen Ming first developed a stable hyperspace channel engine and then wrote the paper. He knew very well what kind of effect the hyperspace channel engine had. Chen Ming estimated that there would be a response in the next 2 days. By then, it would be easy to make money with the patent in hand. But the antimatter engine was a little hot. Because it was completely different from the hyperspace channel engine, Chen Ming could not give a forward research process that at least seemed reasonable. This meant that Chen Ming's psychic power could perform deep repairs on anything without being limited by his own knowledge level. The value of such psychic power was terrifying for anyone. And this was even more true for an empire that had mastered countless cutting-edge technologies. If Chen Ming showed the optimized antimatter engine, he might not be able to leave directly when he came back this time, because his psychic power had already shown performance far beyond its combat value in research. Let's change our thinking a little bit and think about it. If Chen Ming was an official of the empire or a top researcher of the official, then if they knew that there was a psychic with such psychic power running around outside, they would definitely be worried and would definitely want to keep the person in the empire, preferably in an extremely safe place. Then they would provide him with good food and drink, waiting for this psychic to use psychic power to improve technology. This kind of life seems very good, but Chen Ming does not want to live like this. So he hid the improved antimatter technology and gave it to Chao Fan to study. To be precise, Chao Fan was thrown to the stardust level. Then within 2 days, Chao Fan sent Chen Ming a list of research equipment for studying the improved antimatter engine. Because the equipment that Chen Ming bought before did not include equipment for studying antimatter technology, and if he wanted to buy new equipment, the price of this batch of research equipment would be around 12 billion. It is quite difficult to buy, and there is no place to install it after buying it. The remaining space on the highest point had long been filled with the research equipment that Chen Ming bought in the last batch. But Chen Ming finally agreed. And he renovated the idle space such as the crew lounge on the Stardust class, which usually does not appear at the forefront of the battlefield, but at the end of the battlefield to place the self-destructing small plane and left space. It will be used to renovate the research room for Chao Fan. After all, Chen Ming himself has the patent for antimatter technology. It is not difficult to obtain antimatter technology itself, and it is not difficult to give it to Chao Fan to learn. However, if you want Chao Fan to master the improved antimatter engine with his own hands, you can only think about it. But the antimatter engine is a very obvious improvement for the spacecraft. The greatly increased radiation energy capacity and radiation energy dissipation are of great significance even to Chen Ming, not to mention the improved one. So Chen Ming must try to master the improved antimatter technology, which is good for his own fleet and the construction of future colonies. As long as Chen Ming can write a complete research process similar to the improved stable hyperspace channel engine he developed himself, he can throw out the improved antimatter engine technology, and if he doesn't use it, he will face the restrictions that may come from the top of the empire. At the same time, he can make more money by using such improvements. So the 12 billion cannot be saved. Old Wu certainly can't get antimatter-related equipment, so Chen Ming went directly to the boss. The boss did agree, but it's hard to say when he can get this batch of equipment. In short, in the past week, in addition to waiting for equipment and writing papers, Chen Ming is also doing some other things. His research on Zerg buildings is still ongoing. Although it is a bit difficult, the progress is not ideal. The first step of larval cultivation alone took Chen Ming several days to complete. Because under normal circumstances, every step of larval cultivation is carried out by the queen herself, and every larva is pinched by the queen herself. If you want to complete automated breeding through biological buildings, then every step that the queen does by hand must be finely differentiated. The various organs and tissues inside the biological building must be able to reproduce the steps of the queen pinching the larvae one by one, and they must also be able to reproduce in batches. It's like a fertilized egg from splitting to differentiation to the final formation of a baby. Every step is no longer automatic, but requires people to pinch it by hand. The difficulty can be imagined. Fortunately, Chen Ming's psychic power is not a decoration. In the past week, except for the first 2 days when Chen Ming used psychic power on antimatter technology and unstable hyperspace channel engines, the psychic power of the next 5 days was used on the Zerg. Finally, the Zerg biological building named Larva Hatching Pool was successfully created by Chen Ming. As for the subsequent various Zerg-exclusive differentiation and cultivation biological buildings, it can only be said that the goal is still far away. The cultivation of special individuals on the other side is still in progress. But the progress is basically zero. Chen Ming has not yet thought of any means or genes to cultivate Zerg that can fight against 10,000 like the Infernal Lord, and it is even difficult to fight against 100. But you have to eat step by step, and you have to walk step by step. So Chen Ming's idea is to use modern science and technology and the Queen's biological technology to create an individual with combat power at least higher than that of the same Zerg, and then cultivate it step by step. But this is not a simple matter. After all, the Zerg individual is not the biological armor he wears, but a real living thing. How to cultivate such a living thing is a problem that has been bothering Chen Ming for the past 2 days and has not been solved. And since there are special units on the ground, there can also be special units in space. But Chen Ming thought about it carefully and found that the special unit in space is the battleship. After all, the special units on the ground can fight 1 against 10,000 when the opponent has no special units. In space, the only ones that can fight 1 against 10,000 when the opponent has no units of equal strength are the battleships, and the cruisers may fail. So Chen Ming simply gave up the idea of special individuals in space for the time being and concentrated on the research of special units on the ground. Although this concentration is not very focused, at least Chen Ming has tried it. But there is no progress, and there are other things to do. And although the idea of special individuals in space was temporarily abandoned by Chen Ming, but Chen Ming also thought of the Queen of Zerg. The mother of his current Queen of Zerg evolved from the original frigate to a destroyer. So it is reasonable to evolve from a destroyer to a cruiser. And going further, it is not impossible to evolve from a cruiser to a battleship. So Chen Ming has the plan to evolve the current destroyer-level biological spacecraft of the Queen of Zerg into a cruiser level. Direct evolution is a bit difficult, so Chen Ming plans to use the old method of the Zerg. It just so happens that the Queen of Zerg still has the memory left by its mother. So when Chen Ming drove the defenders left at the temporary base to the current location of the Zerg Queen and asked it to try to replace the components of the cruiser, he found that this idea was completely feasible. It just takes time. Before, the Zerg Queen spent a lot of time replacing the parts of a frigate, and it took a long time to evolve from a frigate to a destroyer. So Chen Ming just let the Zerg Queen try it experimentally, and it hasn't actually started yet. At least we have to wait until the Zerg Queen studies the Zerg architecture that allows the Zerg to continue to develop without it. Instead of just having a larvae hatching pool, we can talk about it. Although the progress of most of the things Chen Ming wanted to do with the Queen Zerg was not ideal, there was still some good news. There was no problem in advancing the idea of using the Zerg hive network that Chen Ming had suddenly thought of before. Maybe there would be actual results in a few days. At that time, Chen Ming was going to give Lao Wu and the factory director a surprise, or maybe a shock. But it didn't matter. What mattered was that this technology could bring many benefits to Chen Ming. Chen Ming suddenly shook his hands, ended the record of important events this week, and prepared to rest as usual. But at this time, Chen Ming suddenly received a message from his boss. It was a string of communication codes and a sentence. This is Xiao Yang's contact information. Just when Chen Ming was full of question marks, a call came to Chen Ming's terminal, and it showed Xiao Yang's communication code. Chen Ming answered the phone, and a young male voice with a scholarly air came from the other end of the phone. Chen Ming? It's me. Well, I'm Xiao Yang. Mr. Wuan told you about me, right? Xiao Yang's direct words made Chen Ming stunned for a moment before he responded, Yes, I know you. Okay, let me tell you about the research equipment you want. Now Chen Ming knew the situation. The boss directly gave the things Chen Ming wanted to Xiao Yang to deal with. No wonder he sent the communication code over. Before Chen Ming spoke, Xiao Yang said, Many of the things you want are currently out of stock. If you pay attention to the recent news, you should know that equipment related to antimatter technology is in great demand now. But I have basically found a way to help you get it. Only one antimatter particle capture device is really out of stock. It is not available for the time being. You have to wait for a while. It was a pleasant surprise for Chen Ming to find all the equipment so quickly, so he immediately thanked him and said, It doesn't matter. I can wait. Thank you for your trouble. Yes. Xiao Yang calmly accepted Chen Ming's thanks, and then said, Then this time I contacted you. In addition to telling you about the equipment, I also have another thing to find you. What is it, tell me? There is a small problem with the data of the supreme point I received from you just last week. Chen Ming's face changed slightly, and he suddenly realized a problem. He had obviously repaired the Supreme Point spacecraft in depth, and the spacecraft itself was obviously different from before. So, as a designer who completed the design of the Supreme Point alone, can he find some changes on the spacecraft through the changes in the data transmitted back? Chen Ming felt that the answer should not need to be thought about. So, Xiaoyang said simply, so I want to cooperate with you. Your psychic power should not only control the spacecraft and control things related to the spacecraft, but also have the ability to optimize the spacecraft design, and it is an optimization without any restrictions. I know you. Your current level of knowledge is definitely not enough to optimize the Supreme Point. It has only been 3 months since the Supreme Point was developed, and no one can optimize it. Xiao Yang's tone was very confident and full of arrogance. So when I got the data you returned, I thought about it and finally determined that the reason for the data change was you. Am I right? Chen Ming asked back. Then have you ever thought that I might have made up false data to deceive you? The people Mr. Wu and is optimistic about will not do this. Well, it seems that there is no point in talking nonsense and lying, so Chen Ming asked, how do you want to cooperate? I hope you can send the Supreme Point to me so that I can study its structure and draw a new blueprint. Hearing this request, Chen Ming immediately declined and said, you know what I'm doing now? The Supreme Point is still very important to me. At this time, Xiaoyang, who was in a research institute at the headquarters of the 14th Corps, took a look at the various data of the improved Supreme Point displayed on the computer next to him, and a glimmer of determination flashed in his eyes. He must find out how Chen Ming's psychic power optimized the Supreme Point that he had optimized after his years of hard work in tachyon technology and his psychic awakening. It just so happened that recently, Chen Ming's Supreme Point brought back a lot of actual use data. The various test results of the Research Institute also showed that the Supreme Point class exploration cruiser as a new exploration ship does have its value. With the joint support of the Psychic Society and the 14th Corps, it has been sold. He has also made a fortune during this period. So Xiaoyang said to Chen Ming, I can give you another Supreme. And after I complete the test of your Supreme, I will return your improved Supreme to you. Such conditions could not help but make Chen Ming tempted. But there was a question that Chen Ming had to confirm. How long will it take? About a month. It was equivalent to Chen Ming renting out the Supreme for a month, and the rent was a new Supreme. I have a question. Chen Ming had just opened his mouth when Xiaoyang said directly, the Supreme I gave you before was a prototype, which is different from the Supreme currently in production, so it is not possible for my Supreme to go there and be optimized by you and then come back. Okay, then I can, but I have to wait until your Supreme arrives at my ship before I can go to your side. As long as your ship can arrive on time, I have no problem. Okay. Anyway, Chen Ming's ship can jump continuously, and it only takes a few tens of minutes for Xiao Yang's cruiser to fly back from outside the empire, so it is impossible to be late. After talking about this, Xiao Yang continued, actually, I have another idea for cooperation. You say, it's very simple. I will study the results, you optimize the results, and then we will publish them together, and all the profits will be divided equally. Or another way, I will provide you with technology, you will be responsible for optimization, and I will pay you directly according to the results of your optimization. Chen Ming ignored Xiao Yang's first proposal. He has his own pursuits and will not cooperate with others in this way. But the second idea is a bit more interesting. Chen Ming asked, let me ask you a question. Is the technology you provide your own? Of course not. Xiao Yang said as a matter of course. I just want to see what kind of changes will happen to a technology after it is optimized by your psychic energy. Especially since you started to acquire equipment for researching antimatter technology. This means that you have used your psychic energy on antimatter technology. If you can even optimize antimatter technology, it means that other technologies are definitely not a problem for you. I want to understand your ideas for optimizing psychic energy and try to learn the logic behind it. Is there such a thing? Chen Ming was a little surprised by Xiao Yang's idea. But after thinking about it carefully, it seems that there is really nothing wrong. It is better to teach a man how to fish than to give him a fish. Mastering the ideas of optimization may indeed be of great help to your own research. As a psychic power owner, Chen Ming himself ignored this point, which was a bit wrong. But it is not too late now, and Chen Ming also has more opportunities than anyone else. Seeing that Chen Ming did not reply for a while, Xiaoyang said again, "You are not a researcher, so you may not feel it. But you must know that your psychic power has improved to the point that all researchers in the entire empire dream of, and the products of your psychic power are the same. As a researcher, I am no exception." Chen Ming thought about it and corrected. In fact, it is not for the empire researchers, but for all those in the empire who want the empire's technology to develop, including various officials. He actually knew what Xiaoyang said, so he did not release the improved antimatter engine technology directly, because this may mean that he can never leave the empire again. This time, Xiaoyang didn't seem to think of this. After a while, he reacted and said, "Indeed, it's not a good thing for you if your psychic power is exposed. But we are all members of the Psychic Society, and we have a good relationship with Mr. Wuan. I won't reveal your psychic power, but I still hope you can consider it. Contact me if you have any ideas." Xiaoyang didn't say much. He hung up the phone before Chen Ming explained that he hadn't joined the Psychic Society. It's very straightforward. It's just this straightforward personality. No wonder the boss said that he was excluded in tachyon technology. If it was before, Xiaoyang could only continue to be excluded, but he is a psychic, so he has the capital to continue to maintain this personality. Chen Ming doesn't care anyway. Xiaoyang doesn't have a bad attitude towards him. He's just a little straightforward and speaks a little bluntly. It's not that he can't communicate normally. And if you think about it carefully, there's nothing wrong with what Xiaoyang did just now. First, he explained that he was helping him collect research equipment, and then based on this help, he proposed a request for cooperation, which was totally fine. It was just that the way he spoke was a bit straightforward, so he might run into a wall if he met someone with a bad personality and a bad temper, but it would be absolutely fine if he met someone with a good temper. Chen Ming was considering whether to give Xiaoyang's idea of cooperation a try. After all, Xiaoyang was now considered to be rich, and he should not need to spend a lot of money on development like he did. It was always good to get some wool from him. Chen Ming thought that he could wait until the things that he urgently needed to use deep repair psychic energy were almost dealt with, and then contact Xiaoyang to conduct some deep repair cooperation regularly. It could be considered as making some extra money. Just when Chen Ming made a decision, Chaofan suddenly sent a message from the Stardust class parked in the next ship. "In fact, I have always been curious about how your psychic energy will optimize our Yuhui." Although Chaofan is now studying the optimized antimatter engine on Stardust, he still needs some research equipment on the highest point to assist him. Chen Ming also gave Chaofan the control of the supreme point. So Chaofan heard the conversation between him and Xiaoyang just now, and his curiosity was naturally magnified. To be honest, Chen Ming was also very curious, but it was just because he had been optimizing the technology and helping the Queen to optimize the things it made in the past few days. If the Zerg is optimized, it can directly provide Chen Ming with substantial and tangible benefits. So Chen Ming did not optimize Yuhui for the time being. However, even if Chaofan did not say it, Chen Ming should have optimized Yuhui. Although the effect of the optimization is uncertain, it is not negative at all. The stronger the afterglow at the temporary base, the better. So Chen Ming said, "There will be a chance. Let me try it on other afterglow individuals first. After the test, if it can be guaranteed to be safe, I will use this psychic power on you alpha-level afterglows." Early the next morning, a new week has begun. As usual, Chen Ming read the situation of the individual investigation of Yuhui that Hui Huang was still arranging while he was resting last night. Although his main energy in the first 2 weeks was focused on the mechanical race found during the exploration and the subsequent research and technological improvement of the mechanical race and the insect race. But the development of the galaxies around the temporary base has never been neglected. After all, this is Chen Ming's goal all along. All the other things he did in the middle were paving the way for this goal. The daily report sent by Hui Huang showed that it was calm last night and nothing happened. It's a pity that the Yuhuis did not gain much from the investigation of the galaxy near the previously discovered empty fish skeleton, and still did not find any traces of the empty fish school. And the skeleton has been bombarded by a lot of space radiation and various particles, and has lost its original properties. Except for the skeleton, it can be seen that it is an empty fish, and it has no value to feed the queen worm. However, the Yuhui individuals who were still investigating outside last night basically returned safely. There were not many damaged ones, not to mention the losses. So it doesn't matter if you can't find the empty fish, there will be opportunities to find it later. This morning, Hui Huang listed the material consumption list for the previous week as of last night. It can only be said that the amount of material consumption is still as shocking as last week, and even much more than last week. There are currently more than 50,000 Yuhui individuals in the temporary base. There are about 20,000 individuals actually active outside, and more than 2,000 individuals are doing logistics work in the temporary base. The rest are all in hibernation, as a backup guarantee when necessary. And, during the second jump, the main force to develop the second temporary base. So when the starport of the temporary base was built, it was not built according to the goal of carrying all the more than 50,000 afterglows. Then this starport would not be built in a few weeks. But even so, the amount of fuel consumed by the more than 20,000 afterglows that drove out in destroyers at most is not a small number. If the amount of materials is converted into money according to the market price, it will be even more huge. Add to that the consumption of Chen Ming and the mechanical race. That really makes Chen Ming heartbroken every time he sees it. Fortunately, Chen Ming still has the support of the boss behind him and can purchase a large amount of supplies in batches at a very low price. Otherwise, he would have started to reduce the number of afterglows active outside. The bold words before leaving the empire finally had to bow to the reality of money and material consumption. But continuing like this for a long time is definitely not a solution. Chen Ming is a little uncomfortable looking at a colony that only sees input but no output. Although the boss doesn't seem to have any objections, he has been silently preparing new supplies for Chen Ming according to the material consumption list sent back by Chen Ming every week. But Chen Ming couldn't take it for granted. That's why he improved the technology he had researched before and published it to make money. That's why he tried to improve the antimatter technology and let Chaofan study the antimatter engine. Although this investment is also huge, it is greater than the material consumption of more than 20,000 yuan per week in a short period of time. But Chen Ming believes that his current investment will definitely make back in the end, and make back more. After all, this is an antimatter engine, with a special antimatter fuel. In the same stroke, the output power is higher, the speed is faster, and the fuel mass consumption is less. The improved antimatter engine will only be more cost-effective. And the antimatter engine itself can also use ordinary fuel, but the conversion efficiency of ordinary fuel is lower. But even if it is lower, it is not much lower. At least it is more efficient than ordinary engines in converting ordinary fuel. While studying the antimatter engine, Chen Ming's plan to study the expansion of the Zerg nest and the mechanical city was also a decision made for the growth of his own mental power and thinking speed. After all, now the core of the entire Yuhui, the entire mechanical race, the entire Zerg, and the entire development process is himself. And he can rely on other ways besides training accepting the feedback of the honeycomb network of the mechanical race and the Zerg to become stronger. So it is a normal choice to develop the Zerg and the mechanical race in order to develop itself in the process of development. And there is another benefit to developing the Zerg. That is, after swallowing the energy crystal crab, the Zerg can produce Zerg energy crystals, a product with better output stability, and output difficulty than the energy crystal crab. Moreover, energy crystals are basically pure energy aggregates, but the part that condenses into crystals may be mixed with some substances that represent the species of the producer. But as long as Chen Ming lets the Queen of Zerg make some simple modifications to the Zerg energy crystals that are specifically produced, the traces of the Zerg can be erased from the energy crystals produced. The forged Zerg energy crystals are the result of the energy crystal crabs. As long as the existence of the Zerg energy crystals produced by the energy crystal crabs, which are all-round crushing in terms of output, is known, and can be used with the antimatter engine that can greatly improve the performance of the spacecraft. It will definitely be welcomed by the Empire and widely spread. Soon, Chen Ming will have a new fund in his hand. And as long as the output of energy crystals is still controlled by Chen Ming, then this amount of funds input to him will definitely continue for a long time. Even if the Empire has energy crystal crab samples, it will take at least several years to start mass breeding of energy crystal crabs. But by that time, not to mention the problem of production, Chen Ming's own bugs that produce energy crystals may have changed several generations. It is impossible to keep up with his progress if he starts research and development slowly from energy crystal crabs. Chen Ming sorted out his current ideas a little, and after confirming that there were no mistakes or omissions, he put down the daily report sent by Hui Huang. Then he continued to confirm other situations last night. Before Chen Ming rested yesterday, he promised Xiaofan one thing. He had deliberately found a gamma afterglow for a test. Although Chen Ming fainted in the middle, the deep maintenance did not stop. And when Chen Ming looked over now, the changes in the gamma afterglow were indeed very gratifying. According to Chen Ming's observation and comparison, the structure on the core of this optimized gamma afterglow has been basically optimized. The running logic circuit is obviously much simpler, and its running speed has also been greatly improved, with an increase of about 50%. And the changes of the entire core did not have any impact on the individual afterglows inside the core, and even made this gamma core feel comfortable. I can only say that the effect is very good. Although Chen Ming is not sure whether the alpha-level afterglow core will have such an excellent optimization effect when it is deeply repaired, and it is not clear whether there will be new changes. But even if it is only 1% optimized, Chen Ming must also give his several alpha-level afterglows in his hand a deep repair one by one, so that their abilities can be further improved. Chen Ming has not forgotten that he has not chosen the appropriate alpha-level core bonus for the alpha-level afterglows in his hand except HR. If Chen Ming can make the enhancement of the ability of the alpha-level afterglow obtained by optimization superimpose with the enhancement of the core bonus, even if it is not multiplied, then the overall improvement of each afterglow core is extremely obvious. Chen Ming is the core of the entire development plan, and the alpha afterglow in his hand is the trump card in the core's hand. It's no problem to strengthen it when there is a chance to strengthen it. What's more, the consumption is only the remaining mental power before resting every day. And with Chen Ming's successful strengthening of the afterglow core last night, another thing happened smoothly. It's a little different from the way Chen Ming imagined, because he still hasn't waited for his paper to be published in that journal today and hasn't waited for the reviewer's reply. Instead, he waited for Bai Quan's contact. Before the daily command teaching time started, Bai Quan took the initiative to call him. Chen Ming answered the phone immediately and said, "Bai Quan." The voice on Bai Quan's side seemed a little noisy, but it soon quieted down. Bai Quan was heard saying, "Chen Ming, I'm here to discuss with you the technology you told me about before." Chen Ming immediately became alert and asked knowingly, "What's wrong?" "Your technology, our 14th core, is very interested." Chen Ming smiled a little and said jokingly, "You didn't say that 2 days ago." Bai Quan said without blushing, "The situation will always change with time." To be honest, when Chen Ming said that he had a potential person who was researching technology, Bai Quan didn't think much about it at first. After all, Chen Ming's technology was just like that. He just thought Chen Ming had some strange invention. A few days later, Chen Ming confidently mentioned in class that his research had been completed. When he wanted to publish it, he also mentioned that someone he knew could help speed up the review. Who made him happen to know that one of the reviewers of the journal that Chen Ming was going to publish was from their 14th core. After Bai Quan explained it to others, he basically forgot about it. But then something unexpected happened. This is the reviewer that Bai Quan found. He is not always at work. His main job is still the director of the research institute under the 14th core. He just has a name on the journal and occasionally reviews 2 papers. At the same time, he does have some power to give some papers sent to the journal for review to those who are actually reviewing, so that they can review them in advance. When Bai Quan came to him and mentioned Chen Ming's paper, he remembered this matter, but did not help immediately. After all, someone wanted to publish a paper in that top scientific research journal through Bai Quan's relationship. If the content is a mess, it will not only fail, but may also affect Bai Quan's reputation. Although he is not responsible for the review of Chen Ming's paper, it is better for an insider to check it in advance than to let it go out and embarrass himself. Originally, he just took a look. But after actually seeing the content of the paper, he found that the situation was different from what he thought. This paper is not a paper that is published in a journal through relationships. The technology in this paper has been truly tested and has a considerable degree of value. Asking Bai Quan to use his relationship is just to speed up the review, that's all. So the researcher of the 14th Corps went directly to Bai Quan and explained the situation. Then Bai Quan found that although he had been increasing his attention to Chen Ming, raising the upper limit of Chen Ming's psychic power in his cognition, and incidentally raising his understanding of Chen Ming's own abilities. But his understanding of Chen Ming was still not perfect, and even a little low. Bai Quan's cognition of Chen Ming was mainly psychic power, not Chen Ming's own ability. Of course, he did not look down on Chen Ming. After all, the psychic power of a psychic is of course the ability of a psychic, and Chen Ming is very good. And Chen Ming's terrifying learning ability shown in recent times is indeed exaggerated. But Chen Ming's learning ability is more in the learning of command technology and other aspects of learning. Although Bai Quan also knows that Chen Ming is really learning, no matter what, before becoming a psychic, Chen Ming was just the leader of a logistics maintenance team in a space station in the marginal star field of a branch of the Shinda Company. His technical ability is still okay, but it's just SOSO when you look at it in a magnified way. Chen Ming had never shown any research ability before, and he only made up for it later. To be honest, it was really hard to convince people. But now, the director of their 14th Corps' Direct Research Institute came to see Chen Ming in person for his paper, which made Bai Quan's evaluation of Chen Ming higher again. Not only in terms of psychic power, but also in other abilities as an ordinary person. Bai Quan was ready to talk to Chen Ming about this matter again. So when facing Chen Ming's seemingly teasing words now, Bai Quan could only be thick-skinned and pretend that nothing happened. After all, since Chen Ming had taken the initiative to mention this matter to him before the paper was completed, it meant that he had the idea of making a deal with the 14th Corps. And this paper that made the director of the institute come to see him in person and the technology contained in the paper, he could not take the initiative to push it away no matter what. Just like Bai Quan thought, Chen Ming didn't talk too much. He adjusted his mentality and said to Bai Quan formally, "So what do you think?" Bai Quan cleared his throat again and said, "First of all, let's make sure of one thing. Did you develop this technology yourself? Of course, you must have checked it, right?" "Indeed, we didn't find any similar research." "This is nonsense." Chen Ming checked it before deeply repairing this technology and conducting research. No one in the empire has ever conducted similar research. What's more, the research plan of this entire technology was inspired by the samples of Yu Hui's abandoned research plans when Chen Ming was still with Yu Hui. If Yu Hui's abandoned plans were mastered by humans, then Yu Hui in this star field would have died out long ago. How could Chen Ming be the one to study it? Although it was a plan abandoned by Yu Hui, after Chen Ming's development and deep repair, the effect was amazing enough. Chen Ming's technology, called the Stable Hyperspace Channel Jump Engine, is actually not so much an engine as it is an additional device mounted on the engine, similar to a hyperspace channel system. The effect after stabilization is also very simple and crude. With only one coordinate and a much higher fuel consumption than normal space travel, the spacecraft equipped with this device can jump in hyperspace. There is nothing to say about the effect of the jump. It is a cruiser equipped with a jump engine. The real unique and powerful thing about this hyperspace channel jump engine is that it can be installed on a frigate, allowing frigates to jump. It can only be said that Chen Ming has found a lot of relevant information. It is found that many people have tried to conduct lightweight and miniaturized research on jump engines. But no one has done it so far, no one has succeeded in research, and no one has thought of using hyperspace to achieve an effect similar to jump. And Yu Hui thought of a similar way, but Yu Hui's research also failed, and it may be due to the problem of thinking that they did not continue, leaving the inspiration and failure of the research process to Chen Ming. Chen Ming actually failed at the beginning. If the unstable hyperspace channel jump engine is used carelessly, It is actually almost like suicide. It was not until this technology was deeply optimized by psychic energy that he achieved this goal that no one has been able to achieve so far. Although Chen Ming's technology is basically used up by any frigate without antimatter engines, as long as it performs a hyperspace jump, the fuel will basically be exhausted. But this is the limitation of physical rules. Moreover, the hyperspace channel jump engine does not directly use the jump engine that can be used in the normal universe, but uses the gravity well of hyperspace to achieve pseudo-jump, so it is normal that the energy consumption is larger. But whether there is any remaining fuel after the jump is used up is a matter of time, and whether it can jump is another matter. A jump means an opportunity, which may be an opportunity to escape or an opportunity to win. So this cause is also valuable for frigates. It goes without saying that destroyers above its equivalent is enough to support the consumption of the hyperspace channel jump engine technology, unlike the frigate that needs to be considered. And higher-level ships can do it more casually. Because the technology of the hyperspace channel jump engine is not the same system as the jump engine used by normal cruisers. There is no conflict between them. This means that any cruiser and above can choose to install two systems. Use the hyperspace jump engine first, and then use the ordinary jump engine. This is the value of Chen Ming's research. Of course, this thing also has disadvantages. For example, it takes time to cool down like a normal jump engine. At the same time, because Chen Ming designed the equipment based on the gravity well of hyperspace, it is limited by the system design. So even if the jump is made in a hyperspace that is smaller than the normal universe environment, the actual jump efficiency is not as good as the genuine jump engine. The limit of hyperspace jump is about half of the limit jump distance in a normal universe environment. In addition, the coordinates of the hyperspace jump engine are also limited. Although the hyperspace and normal universe environment are similar, they are basically proportionally enlarged and reduced. However, due to the influence of various strange curvatures caused by the gravity of various planets and other cosmic environments, the actual coordinates in hyperspace are not completely consistent with the coordinates of the normal universe. Instead, it can be said that there must be deviations. This means that the hyperspace channel jump engine must have very accurate coordinates to jump. Otherwise, once there is a deviation, the endpoint of the jump may appear in a high-density hyperspace channel cloud and be struck half to death by hyperspace lightning. It may even be directly sucked into the gravity well of a star in a galaxy and torn into pieces. But in general, as long as there are accurate coordinates, there will be no problems. So this system can be used in any galaxy that humans have set foot on and recorded hyperspace information, and there will be no problems. And this system has another disadvantage. It is carried on the hyperspace channel system, and like the hyperspace channel system, it is easily interfered with. Any blocking device of the hyperspace channel system can directly stop its jump process. Compared with the jump that requires the entire galaxy to be blocked before it can be used, it is extremely fragile. However, even if this system has various disadvantages, adding them up cannot cover up its advantages. The coordinates of hyperspace can be obtained, the fuel can be solved by logistics, and the military can definitely deal with the interference problem. As for the problem of only being able to jump once, it is not a problem at all. Because so far, almost all spacecraft can only jump once under normal circumstances. How can this extra time be considered a disadvantage? On the contrary, it has obvious strategic significance for military operations at any time. In the case that not everyone can use the jump device almost unlimitedly like Chen Ming, the opportunity of multiple jumps is definitely very important. So it is reasonable for Bai Quan to come here personally to deal with it. After confirming with Chen Ming, Bai Quan also told his, or the 14th Legion's, idea. For your technology, our current decision is to cooperate with you to develop this technology, and then block this technology from the outside world, and only use it within our army. Chen Ming just opened his mouth to speak, and Bai Quan said first, we can see that the potential of your technology is definitely not just at the military level. It is a top technology that is enough to allow the entire empire's low-level spacecraft to take a big step forward in mobility. But because of this, we must limit it. You may not understand it, but the empire has been deliberately restricting the development of civilian hyperspace channel technology. Before Chen Ming asked the question, Quan explained, because the Empire's civilian hyperspace channel technology has now developed to a sufficient level. Chen Ming interrupted this time and asked, "Enough?" "Yes. Military spacecraft can use jump engines and stargates to move far beyond the speed of hyperspace, while civilian ships can only move after a long approval process or slowly sailing in hyperspace. This is enough." "Why? What is the reason behind this?" "I think you should understand." Quan's words made Chen Ming think about the current situation of the Empire for a while, and then he suddenly understood and asked, "Maintaining stability?" "Yes." Quan said without denying. "It seems that you have also thought about the consequences of your technology being obtained by certain people." "Yes, I have already thought about the scene where Zhu Jing uses my technology to fly a self-destructing small plane around and blow it up for fun." Quan was silent for a second because of Chen Ming's wonderful description and continued, "It is fine to continue to study hyperspace technology in the military field. But if you want to transfer military technology to civilian use, you must face this negative effect, which is not good for the stability of the Empire at all." Chen Ming, this evaluation, "I think it's a bit conservative. So I just said that the Empire's current level of hyperspace technology is sufficient, and the Empire has only restricted civilian hyperspace technology, not completely blocked it, and everything for military use is normal. Let me give you an example. If your workplace is only 2 kilometers away from your usual resting place, and the Empire has restricted your means of transportation so that you can only use bicycles or some ordinary vehicles, then it also restricted the research and development and use of rail trains and aerospace vehicles in the civilian field, and did not allow you to take these 2 means of transportation when you go to work. Does it affect you?" The answer to this question is obvious. Chen Ming answered decisively, "No. That's what I mean by enough." In terms of the size of the Empire, the current level of civilian hyperspace technology is already sufficient. Quan suddenly said with some emotion, "If it were the pioneering era, your technological empire would definitely do everything possible to spread it to every galaxy, every place with the ability to manufacture related technology, and every spacecraft that can install this technology, making the Empire's territory even larger. But now, the pioneering era is over, and with the occurrence of various events in recent times, the contradictions within the Empire are gradually increasing. If the hyperspace technology of civilian low-level ships is more abundant, the benefits to the overall environment will be far less than the difficulties in solving the problem." Chen Ming interrupted and said, "That's true." Because when he returned to the space station this time, he had already felt the changes in the border star field from many places, and he had personally experienced some changes in the Empire. The same technology is always multifaceted. When the negative effects cannot be effectively controlled, we would rather not release it and only use it within the military. But we can only guarantee that this technology will not be leaked within 5 years of full deployment. Wait a moment. Chen Ming suddenly interrupted Quan and said, "The technology within your army can only be kept for 5 years?" Quan said in a helpless tone, "There is nothing we can do about it. There are so many legions in the Empire, so many starfield theaters and subordinate departments. Together, we can guarantee that there will be no leaks for 5 years. It is already very good. But thinking about it on the other hand, the pressure to leak technology within 5 years has indeed promoted the efficiency of our military technological innovation." Chen Ming couldn't help complaining, "This promotion method is a bit outrageous." "It's outrageous, so we must make countermeasures for this technology within 5 years. We cannot allow this technology to be used without restrictions. At the same time, we must develop a new generation of technology. Otherwise, it will really kill you." In short, according to the researchers here, let's not talk about the new generation of technology for the time being. As for countermeasures, they plan to place a large blocker in every galaxy, similar to the device I sold you before to block jump signals. Then every spacecraft that uses hyperspace jump must first use superlight communication to notify the target galaxy in advance and open permissions, otherwise it will not be allowed to pass. That should solve most of the problems, it just takes time. To be honest, your technology can also promote the development of a bunch of other technologies in disguise. Counting its own effects, it really has great prospects for continued development. But we really can't make this technology public at the moment, and we do have to come up with countermeasures. After listening to Bai Quan's story, Chen Ming frowned and thought for a while, and finally asked with some confusion, "So why are you telling me this?" Forehead. Bai Quan did not expect Chen Ming to react like this, and explained, "Isn't it because you are afraid that you will feel wronged? Let me explain to you in detail why we want to cooperate with you, but we have to impose restrictions and countermeasures. Of course, this matter is not so absolute. There may be some relaxation in these aspects in recent years. But I have only heard this news, and there is no way to guarantee it, so let's do it according to the strict rules first." Seeing Bai Quan's look, Chen Ming also explained, "I don't care. He is not studying this to benefit the people of the empire, nor for any reputation. He is just for self-satisfaction and pure interests, nothing more. Anyway, it is acquired by the 14th Corps and then put into use at the level of the entire Imperial Army. It's not that they won't pay. If the money is paid, what does it have to do with him what others do with this technology? What does it have to do with him whether it is restricted or not? If the Empire opens the pioneering era again one day and really needs this technology, the Empire will definitely be more anxious to release it than him. As for countermeasures, he knew his technology very well. He could just take a blocking pulse generator and counter it directly. He didn't need to spend time studying it. It's just that the star system where the hyperspace jump landed couldn't detect the jump fluctuations in advance like the jump engine, so there really needs to be early warning methods or something. But this is all normal. Even if the military doesn't do it, Chen Ming might have to find a way to make one in the future. Otherwise, if Swajing really got this technology, he would send self-destructing planes everywhere by relying on hyperspace jumps, and he might be disgusted one day. So Chen Ming didn't care about the countermeasure technology at all. Got Chen Ming's reply. Bai Quan understood Chen Ming's attitude, so he didn't continue to talk about it. He brought the topic back to the business and said, "Then let's talk about the details. There are several plans here, and the profit sharing and buyout are both." Chen Ming interrupted directly. "Buyout is not possible. This is too much of a loss for him. Chen Ming's idea is actually very simple, that is, to rely on psychic power to get more research technology patents and use them to cooperate with others to make money and earn a steady income. A one-time buyout looks a lot, but his development is not a one-time thing, and only long-term income is more stable. Unless he is really in a situation where he can't make ends meet and is about to run out of funds, he will never accept a buyout." Okay. Bai Quan must have followed Chen Ming's request, but he also asked tentatively, "Then for profit sharing, give a friendly price?" "Let me think about it." Chen Ming made a simple calculation based on his patent share in antimatter technology and the antimatter patent share of others, Shinda Company, and some sponsors. Calculated the effort and money earned by those companies that helped with publicity and helped to manufacture antimatter-related technical equipment. Then he came up with a ratio that he could completely accept and finally gave Bai Quan a 98% discount. After all, it is a long-term big business. If Chen Ming gives a little more discount, the loss will be relatively large. Moreover, Chen Ming will have another project to cooperate with Bai Quan in the future. Chen Ming's concessions now seem not much, but Bai Quan will definitely get enough benefits in the future. Bai Quan considered it and agreed. "Then we will sign the contract directly. You have basically written the complete technology in the paper. We can just do it directly. However, the actual start of mass production and large-scale testing may be slower. After all, the Empire is still pushing antimatter technology." Chen Ming had nothing to say about this and responded casually, "I know." He knew that antimatter technology and his own technology were not at the same level, and he knew the gap between them, so he had no objection. Anyway, as long as he could get the money in the end, he didn't care about other things. Bai Quan quickly drafted several contracts and sent them to Chen Ming. It was obvious that they had been prepared long ago, and they only needed to change a few numbers to use them. "And we plan to give you a name in the government agencies of the Empire." Name? If you want to be a name, you must find a place to be listed. And the name that Bai Quan said must be under the name of the 14th Legion. It seems that Bai Quan found that the direct invitation to join some time ago did not work, so he changed to another indirect way to slowly work it out. But in fact, From the perspective of the outside world, Chen Ming's current identity has been determined. The Psychic Society does not restrict its internal members from joining other forces, and most other forces do not mind that their subordinate psychics are members of the Psychic Society. In the eyes of the outside world, Chen Ming is a member of the Psychic Society and has also joined the 14th Legion. Only the 14th Corps knew that Chen Ming was just close to the 14th Corps and had some cooperation with them. That's why Bai Quan had been trying to invite Chen Ming to join officially. But Chen Ming never made such a decision that might restrict himself. Bai Quan hurriedly explained when he heard Chen Ming's question. Because some accounts need to be made public, but some things can't be told, it's best to give you a position so that we can pay you money and other benefits later. Chen Ming asked, just a title? Just a title, without any obligations. It's just a civilian position in the Research Institute under our 14th Corps. The Research Institute doesn't even have a real place, let alone obligations. Chen Ming asked again, whether I put my name on it or not, will it affect my cooperation with you? Bai Quan answered decisively, no impact. There will be other solutions for the money missing from the account, but it's a bit more troublesome. Is that so? Forget it. Compared to restricting himself, Chen Ming thought it would be better to trouble Bai Quan. After receiving Chen Ming's answer, Bai Quan did not continue to mention this matter. Anyway, he was rejected more than once or twice. He now has a thorough understanding of Chen Ming and knows what level of invitation will not arouse Chen Ming's disgust. As long as they continue to cooperate in the future, there will always be opportunities for invitations. With more times, who knows when Chen Ming will agree. Bai Quan quickly put the small failure behind him and prepared several contract documents that could not be prepared in advance, ready to give them to Chen Ming for signing. While waiting, Chen Ming could still hear the sound of Bai Quan's fingers tapping on the computer keyboard and terminal. Chen Ming asked Bai Quan with some boredom, you are now in the headquarters of the 14th Legion, right? Yes. Is it troublesome for you to manage the Gallo Star region? Not really. I have a trusted deputy left in the base over there. Besides, after experiencing the previous battle in Yuhui and the downfall of several people who caused trouble in the war zone, internal problems are no longer a problem. It won't have any impact if I leave for a while. And the headquarters also supports me. I will go back as soon as the ceremony is over. I also need to expand the influence of our 14th Legion in the Gallo Star region. Chen Ming suddenly recalled and asked, have I heard you say before that your 14th Legion went to the Gallo Star territory because the progress on the frontal battlefield was not ideal, and you wanted to increase investment in other aspects and create results? Bai Quan paused while sorting out the contract, thought for a moment, and said to Chen Ming, it wasn't at first. At first, it was purely because that bastard Cheng Xinghe was causing trouble outside, and I had to go and get him back. But after passing through, a casual investigation revealed that the local army in this Edge Star region has poor military discipline and is extremely corrupt. But it's strange that they managed to hold the border even when there was a star territory of the Afterglow branch and a star territory of the mechanical tribe outside. I put some pressure on the local military and took some time to investigate. It turns out that not everyone is getting bad. There are still soldiers from a few units who are not collaborating. They are the main force on the front line against the Machine Clan and Yuhui. Then there happened to be a clearly written list of smuggled materials and personnel provided by Shinda Company. With this and an urgent appointment document from the rear, we occupied this place. They should be sent to a military court if they should be sent to a military court, and those who should be collected should be collected. In short, our 14th Legion fully took over the military management of this starfield, and then we came up with the idea of opening a gap in this direction. It's mainly because of the recent changes in the Empire's policies. Listening to Bai Quan's words, Chen Ming suddenly remembered something that had happened before, and he immediately said, wait a minute. What's wrong? In Bai Quan's confusion, Chen Ming opened the panel of the Mule-class logistics cargo ship that was being driven around the Gallo Star territory by Gamma B. Then opened the panel's warehouse to confirm. Later, Chen Ming said to Bai Quan, I have something in my hand. Chen Ming activated his spiritual energy on the Mule class and sent something from the Mule class cargo compartment to Bai Quan. What is this? Dog cough. Military registration tag? Right. The military status card that Chen Ming just sent was from when he and Gamma A drove the refraction and followed Yue's fleet to raid the Gallo 2-sector military outpost near Ruemu. On a captured military spacecraft, it was found on the body of a soldier who was stuck in the escape hatch of the spacecraft. What was found along with this military registration plate was the evidence of military smuggling and corruption in the Gallo 2 sector that Bai Quan had just mentioned and that Chen Ming had discovered and handed over to Shinda Company, which in turn handed it over. Although he had deliberately packed the things in the warehouse onto the mule before, he didn't expect that they were actually preserved until now. Chen Ming explained to Bai Quan the process of obtaining his military status card. Anyway, now that his psychic powers have been announced, there is no need to hide the past. At the end of the explanation, Chen Ming added, I don't know how your side dealt with this soldier in the end, but I still hope that he will be treated fairly in the end. Bai Quan also temporarily put down the terminal, lowered his head and looked at the military registration card in his hand, rubbed the name on it and said, Don't worry, the 14th Army has a complete protection system for all fallen soldiers, and it will not let anyone feel cold. I will arrange a special investigation, and the results of the investigation will be announced at that time. Just wait and see the news. Bai Quan put away his military status card and said to Chen Ming, Speaking of which, I remember you told me before that I will soon know why you, a spaceship student, suddenly want to learn those biological technologies, right? Chen Ming nodded and responded, It's almost time. It should be during your promotion ceremony. It seems like this matter will have something to do with me. Yes, it has a lot to do with you. Good thing or bad thing? How could something bad happen on your big day? That's good. Oh, by the way, since you mentioned the ceremony later, I have something to tell you. I probably won't be able to spare any time from now on, so I may have to stop teaching you for a few days. Chen Ming can understand Bai Quan's busyness. Moreover, Bai Quan has been able to take time out to teach him every day for more than a month, which shows that he values him enough. So Chen Ming is not surprised when Bai Quan says that he will stop teaching for a few days, nor is he unable to accept it. It's just right that I can digest what I have learned during this period. Bai Quan said with a smile, I don't think you need to digest it at all. With your learning efficiency, you can digest everything you learn in one go, especially in the past few days. Chen Ming did feel that his learning efficiency in the past 2 days was indeed exaggerated, because he had figured out one thing after writing the paper before. Anyway, he had destroyed a colony of the mechanical race, and it was certain that the mechanical race would come to hunt him down. The scale of the hunt would definitely be more than 40 cruisers. Since it didn't matter to Chen Ming whether it was a cruiser fleet or a battleship, he didn't care as long as the temporary base was not discovered. Besides, is there anything in the universe that can outrun him? Chen Ming is not afraid of the multiple jumps brought by psychic energy. Moreover, since the mechanical race is already in his hands, wouldn't it be a loss if he doesn't control them or dismantle them into the most basic materials? Even if Chen Ming only kills the consciousness of these mechanical race individuals and leaves the body, it is still a pure loss. It is better to be straightforward. Therefore, with the feedback of the enhanced mechanical race hive mind network, the learning efficiency instantly jumped up a lot. It didn't take long for Bai Quan to get used to Chen Ming's learning efficiency when he was shocked again. Chen Ming did not respond to Bai Quan's statement. He just smiled and asked, I should have studied half a semester's progress in more than a month? Bai Quan thought about the part he taught Chen Ming yesterday and said, No, you are now nearing the end of the semester. I know you psychers have good brains, even if you don't specialize in brain enhancement, but I didn't expect it to be so outrageous. Maybe I have a talent? Of course you have. Before you learned how to command, you were already very talented when you were able to rely on the shabby fleets and psychic powers of the pirate space station to carry a military fleet and defeat both sides. But after learning professional knowledge, it's not certain whether you still have talent. I have seen many people who were very spiritual before they studied systematically, but they became a bit rigid after studying. I don't want you to become like this. Chen Mingfa asked, I remember I just had a fight with the machine race, right? Can't you see if I still have talent? Bai Quan suddenly had a troubled look on his face and said, I've seen the video you sent. To be honest, it's of no value. If you can beat it, you can just get on the drone and crush it. If you can't beat it, a ship will be behind you, and the drones will cover your retreat. It's true that there's no problem with what we've done, but there's really not much we can say. Unless you don't take that stardust out, you may encounter an evenly matched enemy that requires you to use your psychic powers. You must have experienced such a battle, or a pure battle with a weak opponent and a strong opponent, then you can see whether you still have talent in command after systematic learning. Chen Ming knew that there was nothing wrong with what Bai Quan said, but he had his own thoughts. I think it would be better not to have such a day. All the enemies who can be crushed will be crushed, and those who cannot be crushed will run away. There will come a day when I can't run anymore. Chen Ming knew clearly that Bai Quan was talking about a colony. Since he wanted to personally build a colony that was not within the empire, he would have to face foreign enemies in the future. This was something he would never be able to escape in the future. That's why I'm learning command techniques. I just hope that I can rely on psychic energy to get through in normal situations, and I have the ability to command when necessary. Bai Quan had some understanding of Chen Ming's ideas during his contact with Chen Ming during this period, so he didn't argue with Chen Ming on this point, but just said, "Then I'll take the time to arrange a test for you in the next 2 days and borrow our simulation equipment." Is it finally done? Yes, the station in the Gallo star field is already being installed, and it will be ready for you soon. Don't take away the equipment I worked so hard to get. Not that bad, not that bad. Bai Quan's casual joke eased the slightly stiff atmosphere of the conversation. Chen Ming asked curiously, "Who are you going to arrange for me to be my opponent?" "I'm still thinking about it. I have to find a way to find you an opponent who can be evenly matched with you who has psychic powers." "Oh." Chen Ming noticed the problem in Bai Quan's words and asked, "Can this equipment also simulate psychic powers?" Bai Quan said as a matter of course not. It's just a simulation environment that can be debugged, enough to achieve some effects similar to your psychic powers. We'll officially start after I return from headquarters. Chen Ming and Bai Quan signed several documents. The tone of jointly developing hyperspace channel engine technology and dividing the profits in proportion was determined. In the future, the 14th Corps will have professional technicians to do related things. Chen Ming does not need to worry too much. At most, he will need to participate in a few issues occasionally. At other times, just wait for the money. As Bai Quan really entered the busiest period, the morning teaching was suspended, and Chen Ming had some free time to do some things that were not originally planned. For example, in cooperation with Hui Huang, the exploration and finishing work around the first jump landing point was started early. Last week, the exploration of the galaxies around the temporary base had made about 80% progress. It is expected that all galaxies with habitable planets will be explored within 2 weeks. Of course, there is only about a week left. It is time to start the preparations for the second jump. Chen Ming needs to count all the survey data and various gains so far, and summarize a set of efficient exploration processes based on the exploration situation around the first temporary base, and use it in the next exploration. Of course, saying it is finishing does not mean that Chen Ming will leave directly. It is impossible that this temporary base that has just been built will be demolished in just over a month. He can arrange for Yu Hui to go to the next temporary base while leaving some Yu Hui individuals to investigate other galaxies that have not been investigated yet. The backup Yu Hui that was specially left before will be used at this time. After all, 80% of the exploration progress does not mean a comprehensive exploration of the galaxies around the base. There are still many galaxies that Chen Ming's Yu Hui has never been to. It is just because some stars will make it impossible for habitable planets to exist in the galaxy, and galaxies without habitable planets have no value for Chen Ming to build colonies, so his Yu Hui has not been to those galaxies. But there will always be some galaxies where there are valuable planets, even if there are no habitable planets. It is not a loss for Chen Ming to transfer the data surveyed in valuable planets and valuable galaxies. Under the current premise that he is conducting a large-scale investigation, the cost of each fuel can be reduced a lot. Then the data obtained from the investigation will definitely be more than the fuel money after being converted into direct money. Unless the surrounding hundreds of light years are all empty and there are no valuable galaxies and planets, but this is unlikely. And the money earned can continue to be invested in the activation of the second batch of Afterglow and the construction of the second temporary base. Hui Huang will definitely arrange the activation of the second batch of Afterglow at that time. And the construction of the second temporary base requires special investigation of planets and galaxies suitable for the construction of temporary bases. The first temporary base selected by Chen Ming was just a planet picked at random to start construction due to the situation at the time. And the choice of the location of the second temporary base must be carefully considered under the premise of having enough time to proceed. At least choose a planet with certain resources that can be developed for a period of time to make up for part of the material consumption. Let the afterglow left on the ground of the planet play more effects. Of course, Chen Ming had no time to do this arduous task and finally handed it over to Hui Yao to deal with. It is the most suitable afterglow to accomplish this goal. There are also some things that Chen Ming has been doing all the time, and he has stepped up his efforts after having free time in the past 2 days. For example, he continued to persuade HR, who had already shown obvious signs of giving in, to completely let go of his prejudice against humans, at least his prejudice against Chen Ming, and completely join him. Another thing is to find a way to remember in his mind that he also has Flash, an alpha-level afterglow individual. It can only be said that Flash, the alpha afterglow, has always been very taciturn. Although after Chen Ming rescued it from the massacre of other afterglows, it was basically certain that Flash would no longer have other ideas, and it was indeed silently guarding the temporary base, which was much easier to deal with than HR. But the only problem was that it was too taciturn, and Chen Ming basically never took the initiative to hear it talk to him. The rare contact was when Chen Ming regularly repaired several cruisers that had no docking station and had to be repaired by himself. This made Chen Ming forget about Blink a lot of times, and forget that he had an alpha-class afterglow. So in the past 2 days, Chen Ming tried to remember Blink while trying to soften HR. The effect was not ideal. But it was not a big problem. Blink would still do what it should do. It can only be said that Baichuan's busyness did provide Chen Ming with a lot of time to do other valuable things. In addition to the preparations for the second jump, persuading and understanding the afterglow at hand, and studying according to the daily schedule every day, Chen Ming also used the deep maintenance that was basically equivalent to once a day in the right place before going to bed every night. For example, optimizing the afterglow core and helping the Queen optimize the biological building. At the same time, Chen Ming specially allocated one time to Xiaoyang, completing the first trial cooperation. Everything is moving in a good direction. And time came to the day of Baichuan's promotion ceremony in a blink of an eye. Although Chen Ming could not attend, he still needed to pay attention to the ceremony. Therefore, he contacted the boss in advance and told him if there was anything. Of course, even if Chen Ming did not mention it, the boss would definitely tell him at that time. After all, Chen Ming still had a highlight to show at this ceremony, with Bai Quan and related personnel in place. The promotion ceremony also started normally as the time came. However, only the military and government officials were invited to the ceremony of awarding Bai Quan the rank of lieutenant general, and not many people could see it. However, many people were invited to the banquet later. In addition to the military officials, there were also representatives of companies that had cooperative relations with the military. So the entire banquet hall was basically divided into 2 sides. On one side, the people of the 14th Corps sat in a solemn and serious atmosphere. On the other side, the atmosphere was quite lively. After all, such a banquet is a great place for socializing. People from different work fields can get to know each other and talk about business. Bai Quan, whose military rank was already marked with the lieutenant general, entered the banquet hall. The atmosphere in the banquet hall was the most lively. However, everyone present restrained their behavior. Bai Quan, the protagonist of the banquet, walked to the side where the military was sitting after entering the banquet hall. Then he came to the side where the forces that had cooperated with the 14th Corps were concentrated. And with him came several juniors from the 14th Corps who had been led by Bai Quan before. They are all juniors who have stood out from their peers and have shown their talents and practical abilities. They are the future of the 14th Corps, so they need to follow Bai Quan to get in touch with the partners of the 14th Corps. Among them are Chang Xinghe and his sister Cheng Xinghai, who have met Chen Ming before. However, Cheng Xinghe is not in a good state at this time, and his spirit is a little sluggish. It is indeed because he was beaten by Chen Ming, who has no command experience at all and was finally captured. But after all, he had no consciousness during the period of cryopreservation, which was not bad. At least he was still alive. So the main reason was that Bai Quan personally beat him up several times after he was brought back. He had worked hard to get promoted, but his position was demoted again and again, which made him look like this now. In addition, he was assigned some tasks after he came back alive. That is, he must personally handle the pensions and follow-up support arrangements for all the soldiers who died because of his decisions. This is the rule of the 14th Corps, and every battlefield commander must do it personally. Although this task is troublesome and difficult, it is not too annoying for Chen Ming, and he also knows the benefits of doing so. But Bai Quan gave him an extremely troublesome task 2 days ago to confirm the reversal of a matter that has been settled. The various things in it are even more troublesome. And he also heard that this task was created by Chen Ming, which made him almost PTSD when he heard Chen Ming's name. So when Bai Quan went to Wuan, who was surrounded by many people and was the core focus of the other half, Chen Ming silently lowered his head and began to play dead. Chen Ming's sister Chen Ming formed a sharp contrast with him. Although Chen Ming was also wearing a military uniform, her short hair just added a bit of vitality to her. She looked not as serious as other military people at the banquet, but very lively. She walked in front with a smile, pushed the crowd away, and greeted Wuan. She also pulled Chen Ming, who was embarrassed by himself, to meet Wuan and said hello. Chen Ming knew that Wuan had a good relationship with Chen Ming, so he tried to avoid seeing Wuan these days when he knew that Wuan was staying at the headquarters of their 14th Corps, but he couldn't avoid seeing him at this time. After all, the first person Bai Quan brought them here was Wuan, and he couldn't avoid him because he was following Bai Quan. And those who were originally complaining about Chen Ming's somewhat barbaric actions immediately changed their expressions when they turned their heads and noticed that Bai Quan had come over. Some people gave up Wuan and surrounded Bai Quan, praising Bai Quan with their mouths full of praise for Bai Quan, hoping to chat with Bai Quan for a few more words. However, they did not dare to go too far. When Bai Quan smiled and responded to them one by one, they took the initiative to make way for Bai Quan to lead to Wuan, who they had surrounded before. Wuan, who was originally sitting in his seat, stood up very respectfully and raised his glass to Bai Quan. Bai Quan immediately raised his glass and gently bumped it with Wuan and said to Wuan, "Mr. Wuan, I heard that you didn't let anyone help you collect the gifts when you came this time? Yes, some things have to be accepted by you in person." The two looked at the corner of the banquet hall at the same time, where there was a box-shaped object covered with a layer of cloth. "Why not now?" "Okay." Wuan agreed and walked to the corner of the banquet hall with Bai Quan surrounded by a group of people. On the way over, Bai Quan suddenly asked, "Mr. Wuan, can you tell me what it is in advance? I heard Chen Ming say 2 days ago that he would give me a surprise, but since he didn't come..." "Yes, let me pass on the surprise." Wuan took out a spindle-shaped crystal that could just fit in one hand and a piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to Bai Quan. This crystal is the back shell that the crystal crab naturally shed during this period, and it shines with a gorgeous luster under the lights in the hall. Before Bai Quan asked and Wuan introduced it, Chen Ming said like a little girl who was attracted by something shiny, "What a beautiful stone." Bai Quan took the crystal, looked at it for a while, and handed it to Chen Ming, who was standing next to him with shining eyes, and then picked up the paper. This is a test report. Although Bai Quan is not a designer who specializes in designing warships, he knows what capabilities and performance each component of a warship has, what is good and what is bad. Therefore, when he came to this test report, he was first surprised by the nature of the material itself, and then he was shocked to see the actual specific data with his own eyes. Finally, he was happy after understanding the reason why Chen Ming and Wuan brought this thing to him. The benefits brought by such a material that can crush all the energy storage devices today after mass production are extremely significant. And in the near future, countless people in the entire empire will definitely be eyeing this piece of fat. Although Wuan and Chen Ming are there, no one will openly snatch this technology, but various small tricks will definitely emerge in an endless stream. Those people will not only try to intervene, but also try to replicate it in every possible way, and even want to get a complete production method and production system. Although Wuan and Chen Ming have connections and abilities, they do not have enough power. After all, the Psychic Society is a loose organization, and it is impossible to really help them in these matters. So they need a force with enough weight in the empire to protect this unique business. And their final choice is him, Bai Quan. Bai Quan raised his mouth and said, "So that's what's in that box?" Wuan nodded slightly and stepped forward to pull open the cloth covering the crystal crab observation box. For crystal crabs, too big and too small, appeared in the sight of everyone at the scene. The two big ones were given to Wuan by Chen Ming before, and the two small ones were hatched from the two eggs that Chen Ming gave to Wuan before. Standing next to Bai Quan, Cheng Xinghai, who was glancing at the test report in Bai Chuan's hand, was immediately attracted by the moving sparkling crabs. She immediately asked Wuan, who had pulled open the cloth, "Uncle Wu, what is this?" Although Wuan was not very familiar with Bai Quan before, let alone Cheng Xinghai. But after a few days since he came here, Cheng Xinghai knew that he was the top psyker of the Psionic Society. From time to time, she would come over to ask for advice on psychic matters while the two of them were chatting about something, under the pretext of looking for something to do with Bai Quan. Over the course of a few days, she became familiar with him. Cheng Xinghai has just come of age, so it is not offensive to call Wuan, who is actually in his 30s. After Wuan checked with Bai Quan's eyes, he explained with an expression that looked at his younger generation. "This is the crystal crab, the animal that produced the crystal." Cheng Xinghai blinked, his dark pupils reflecting the beautiful light of the crystal. She gradually looked away from the crystal in her hand and asked, "Is there anything special about this crystal?" "This is a special energy storage material, and its effect is stronger than all current professional energy storage materials and energy storage devices. There is also specially tested data to prove it." Although Wuan was answering Cheng Xinghai's question, he was obviously speaking to other people present. There were obviously many businessmen among the surrounding partners of the 14th Army. Someone among them immediately realized something and asked Wuan, "Mr. Wuan, what data are you talking about?" Wuan pointed to the corner of the box and said, "Use the terminal to read the code here, and you will see it. I found the results measured by the Energy Materials Research Institute with government-issued qualifications. They have their stamp on it." The crowd who came with Bai Quan immediately gathered around the observation box and soon saw the same content as Bai Quan's test report. Representatives from several companies that specialize in energy storage materials and energy storage equipment began to breathe heavily. They know how much impact it will have on the entire market if such materials are real and can be mass-produced. Wuan didn't whet their appetite and said directly, "If you paid attention to Bai Quan's movements some time ago, you should have heard about Chen Ming, right? This is the technology Chen Ming got from Yu Hui. Chen Ming can already mass-produce this material?" Hearing someone in the crowd ask this question, Wuan's mind flashed back to what Chen Ming had said to him before, and he replied, "Basically, it's okay, but the output will be a little low in the early stage, and the output will gradually increase later." What about the afterglow? Wuan was not surprised at all when he heard this question. Just like what he said when he talked to Chen Ming before, when someone learned about the existence of such a thing, someone immediately had strange thoughts. However, he also answered very straightforwardly, "Before leaving Yu Hui, Chen Ming had successfully taken away Yu Hui's entire research institute for this kind of creature and obtained the complete cultivation method and cultivation equipment. Yu Hui only has a few scattered samples at most. It will take at least several generations, several years, or even more than 10 years to cultivate it to a scale that can be mass-produced. If anyone is interested, you might as well go to Yu Hui's star domain and try it yourself. Yu Hui has something left behind." The people present are obviously not fools. After being influenced by Chen Ming in front of Yu Hui, it is absolutely a suicidal act for outsiders to want to go in again. Even if Yu Hui really still has the relevant technology, they will never be able to go to Yu Hui's star domain again to bring the technology out. So if this technology does not start from Chen Ming, there is no other way to obtain it. They can only find a way to lower their status and join in to get a share of the pie. Otherwise, after a few years, the technology will be updated and it will be cold. Quite a lot of people are eager to use this technology, but they haven't made any special moves yet. After all, Wu and took out this technology at Bai Quan's promotion ceremony. So this technology cannot be released without the consent of the owner. Even if they want to seek cooperation, they should not look for Wuan, but the 14th Legion. Chen Ming is the manufacturer, Wuan is the middleman, and Bai Quan is the distributor. At this time, Bai Quan was happy that Chen Ming was willing to hand over the sales rights of such a material technology to him, and he also understood why Chen Ming was studying biotechnology before. Obviously, it was to at least understand some of the cultivation technology of this special biological material, so as not to be completely in the dark and not know what he was producing. The actual operation of cultivating energy crystal crabs and harvesting materials should be handled by the afterglow he controlled. Bai Quan's idea was logically correct, but he was indeed successfully misled by Chen Ming. But at least he is still very happy now. Even if today's banquet is over, the threshold of his office may be trampled down, so he has to be mentally prepared in advance. At this moment, Cheng Xinghai, who had taken the research report from Bai Quan and read it, suddenly tilted his head and asked Bai Quan, "Chen Ming? Is it the Chen Ming who relied on the ragtag fleet to beat my brother to the point where he could only hide in the escape pod?" Hearing this, Cheng Xinghai, who was pretending to be dead, lowered his head even more and didn't even want to explain that he was actually beaten by a local military's own ruler cruiser. Bai Quan obviously didn't care about Cheng Xinghai's face and directly admitted, "It's him." Cheng Xinghai's pupils flashed a trace of curiosity and a trace of belligerence. She said to her two seniors, "Uncle Bai, Uncle Wu, I want to get to know him." Bai Quan immediately understood Cheng Xinghai's idea and said, "Do you want to fight with him?" Cheng Xinghai showed a pitiful expression and stared at Bai Quan and asked, "Is it okay?" Before Bai Quan could answer, Cheng Xinghai suddenly pulled Cheng Xinghai's sleeve and said, "Chen Ming is not from our 14th Corps. How can he fight you on the simulation equipment? You don't want to do it for real, do you?" Oh. Just when Cheng Xinghai felt a little regretful, Bai Quan suddenly remembered that he had to arrange a test opponent for Chen Ming. It would have been good to find Cheng Xinghai, but he had a conflict with Chen Ming, so he was excluded by Bai Quan at the beginning, and Bai Quan had never thought about which opponent was suitable for Chen Ming. Since Cheng Xinghai took the initiative to bring it up now, and she and Chen Ming had no conflict, it was indeed a good choice. So Bai Quan said, "It's not impossible." Bai Quan ignored Cheng Xinghai, who was puzzled, and said to Cheng Xinghai, "I can arrange for you to fight him on the simulation device within a week. You can prepare first." Really? A new sub-device has been installed in the Gallostar region. The higher-ups have agreed to let Chen Ming have access to this device. You can simulate it remotely, but don't come to me if you get beaten and cry. The aggressiveness in Cheng Xinghai's eyes was taken back by her, and she showed a good girl smile on her face and said, "How could it be? Thank you, Uncle Bai." Okay, you have met everyone, and it can be handed over. I have something to talk to others later, so go and have fun. Okay. Just as the crowd followed Bai Quan and Wu went back to one side of the banquet hall, there was a person in the crowd who was staring at the direction where Cheng Xinghai left the banquet hall and thinking. He was the chairman of Xinda Company, Su Lin. He did get the invitation letter for Bai Quan's promotion ceremony, as he said before, and he did come here and watched silently for a long time with a glass of wine beside him. Although he was a little regretful that Chen Ming did not give the sales rights of this crystal technology to their Xinda company to operate. But the focus of his mind at this time was not here, but on a side idea that just flashed through his mind.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.